Welcome to another episode of the Nines here on the Cloud9 Twitch channel. I'm Monte. I'm again alone in a studio, and we have to talk about some unfortunate things this week, and that is the LCS team's first loss in the summer split. Very unfortunate, but they're still 9-1 overall, so not too much to worry about. Have at least a small lead here over Team Liquid. And to join me to talk about the win over TSM and then the subsequent loss to 100 Thieves is going to be jungler and reigning MVP of the LCS. It's Blaber. Hello. Blaber. Well, we'll see if we can actually hear each other.
I can't hear him.
You might not be able to hear me.
Okay. Yeah.
There we go.
Hey.
What's up?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. How's your toothpick taste this morning?
Oh, it tastes great.
Is this your substitute for breakfast right now, or lunch, as it were?
Yeah, I guess.
All right. So, unfortunately, you guys did end up losing this week, and we'll get to that in a minute. But let's talk about your preparation coming in this week, because I was really interested to see you guys using the Wukong Senna that we've seen a lot from Mad Lions over in LEC. So one of the things that you guys have all said is that you really wanted to be more stylistically diverse over the course of this split, and that was kind of your main goal, not going 18-0, not winning anything. What was your plan like coming into the week? Were you always going to run just the Wukong Senna and try it out, or were you going to be more experimental potentially?
I mean, I wouldn't say we came into the week saying we're gonna play Wukong Shen no matter what, but I think Sven played over half his games on Wukong in 1 week, so I mean it's pretty obvious that we were gonna play it this weekend. Like he never actually said that he thought this was the best strategy or anything, but he always wanted to play it. He was like, just pick me this, I want to play this. And Vulcan was always down, and we're always down to play new things, so we decided to just try it out this weekend, and it worked well on Saturday, so we tried it again on Sunday.
So typically this has been something that Mad Lions have actually decided to pick into Varus, as it were, and it's a method for kind of baiting out the Varus pick. Did you think it was more versatile than that, or what was your game plan revolving around the Wukong Senna? Were you ever going to flex it into the top lane?
Yeah, I mean, we were always willing to flex champions anywhere, honestly. Even if it's not really been practiced, we're not that scared to just play champs in other roles if it makes draft better. We think it's just good overall in general, but like as you can see, it doesn't really get push. As a duo, it's more of like a scaling pick, so if we get super shit on early like we did in the 100 Thieves game, it's really hard for them to actually scale.
We'll get to the 100 Thieves game. Let's start off with the TSM game, a higher note. So this is the conclusion of the first round robin. It was the most hyped match of the week. The week even kicked off with this like classic C9 versus classic TSM, except without Reginald for some reason, plus Voyboy, which Cloud9 won. So there was a lot of focus on this match. What was your mentality like coming into this game? Did you think TSM was going to be your biggest threat of the first, of the rest of the season? Let's put it that way.
I wouldn't say I've really considered TSM a threat this entire split, honestly. I think they're good, right? But I don't think they're really a threat to us. Every time we play against them, they really just cannot win unless Bjergsen legit 1v9s the whole game. So yeah, I didn't really feel too threatened going to the TSM game. I was really confident that we would win. Even after like what happened early, I think I never felt worried that they were going to win that game.
Why is that? Because you guys did fall behind early. Bjergsen started to get ahead. There were a lot of roams happening, but the top lane was still going into your favor. You had Licorice in the Ornn versus Mordekaiser matchup. What were the comms like when Bjergsen started to get ahead and they started a turret dive, especially in the bottom side?
Well, we actually knew that if we could get our team comp to like 20 minutes, they can't actually play the game. Like they're honestly missing an ADC that game. He can't team fight at all. I don't know who's going to kill this Ornn in the late game, so we pretty much knew that if we could just stabilize and look for team fights, then they pretty much can't win this game.
Were you focused on getting Licorice ahead just so he could get unkillable faster, or as a jungler, what was your focus in this game?
I mean, I think I got really lucky getting the first dragon, honestly. I don't think we should ever get this first dragon when they have bot push, and probably should have mid push. If their bot lane has a bard, that should be moving mid. But I think I was just trying to make sure we don't get too far behind early. And yeah, there's not really much else I can do besides farming and trying to protecting bot lane. I don't think we can really dive Mordekaiser, even though Eric was really beating up on him. So I think we were just trying to scale that game.
What was the communication like in terms of how you're approaching these late game team fights? What is your job when you're playing? Is it to go into the back line with Sven while he's on the Wukong? How do you conceptualize the team fights as they're starting to take place when you have that strength after 20 minutes?
Yeah, so I mean, I was really weak that game just because I was dying a lot, but generally when we play with champs like Wukong, Sven can get a really good flank. He'll start from behind, and then I guess since we have Ornn and Set, we'll just come from the front. Like, we don't really need to flank since we're the front line. And Sven, for example, got a super good flank at the end of the game onto Varus. And yeah, I mean, Varus can't live versus Wukong, Ornn, Set, so it's just over for him.
Do you think this was a draft issue from TSM, and that, you know, if it goes beyond a certain point in the game, even if they do have the leads that they have, that it does become very difficult for them to win? But do you think it was possible for them to close this game out, or would you just throw out this draft entirely? Do you think it's just not really feasible when you guys have the Ornn and the Azir and you can kind of keep them at range and you always have that flank pressure with the Wukong onto Varus?
I mean, I think their draft is honestly fine. I think if we were playing their side of the draft, we would be not that unhappy with how it went, honestly. I don't think the top lane matchup should have went the way it went, where Mordekaiser is just getting pounded. Like, then it's, why are you counter-picking this champ into Ornn, right?
Yes.
And bot lane, they should have a lot of pressure early, right? Like, not just early, like, even when Sen Wukong hit 6, it was still hard for us to pressure. I think I died once trying to hold the wave because I carelessly used my W, but the first dragon should be theirs. They should definitely get the second one and the Herald too. So they should have a decent goal lead, in my opinion, going into the game, but it didn't feel like they had a goal lead, if I'm correct, that was that large. And LeBlanc should also be able to win side versus Azir, right? That's their counterpick mid. So they definitely have ways to win this game, but it felt like they didn't really use their early pressure that they should have had, I think.
How do you perceive Volibear jungle right now? Because it's still a flex pick. We're starting to see it more in the jungle as the weeks pass by after seeing it almost exclusively into the top lane. Do you think it's a strong pick right now? What are the conditions under which you yourself or Cloud9 might select it in the future?
I mean, I've played Volibear already once.
Yep.
And I think Volibear is really strong right now in the meta. It did get nerfed on this next patch, so we'll see how it is, but I don't think the nerf changes it too much. It's just a generally really strong pick, and I think we might be picking it more as long as the nerf didn't affect it too much.
So you come off this win. It ends up being pretty commanding. Even though you fall a few thousand gold behind, you do end up actually closing the game out in still under 30 minutes. So you're able to capitalize on that advantage. As you said, you get a nice flank in their jungle in order to win this game. Let's take a look actually early on here at some stats by Microsoft. So you have to turn on the stream here, Blaber, and take a look for yourself, because I pulled up you versus Spica. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how you're doing this split, because one of the more interesting things is that you are actually accounting for 35% of your team stats right now, which is not entirely fair because your team doesn't die that much. But even so, with that in mind, you actually still have the second highest deaths total in the LCS for a jungler, just behind Svenskeren. So what's your job within the team? Because you're going in a lot, and you have won a player of the week already. You've been doing really well, started out super strong on the Olaf. This week you ended up dying quite a few times. Is this just part of your job with the team, that you're tanking this damage? What's the game plan for you guys when you head into your LCS matches?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the game plan is not for me to kill myself.
Well, sometimes it can be, to be fair, right? Sometimes you just have to take the death in order to engage.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't really think about it too much. Obviously, I'm not trying to, I guess. I don't actually think my deaths were that high. I mean, my death share is always high on this team because me and Eric have like all our deaths, pretty much always. And
That's true.
And I didn't think I had that many deaths going into the last split. Going into this week, obviously I died 8 times from Jarvan. So
that did tilt the stats pretty significantly.
So
I won't lie.
My KDA is not going to be good, like for this week. But especially I think on a champ like Jarvan, if I need to engage for us to win fights, then I'm just going to die for losing.
Sure.
That's just how it is.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, going in a game, it's just I'm going to play how I want to play, and early game, pretty much I do whatever I want, and my team will tell me if they can help or not, and I'll make my decision based on that.
One other thing I want to point out about this is obviously you're getting a lot of the gold, especially when you're on some of these carry junglers like Olaf, and that comes with a lot of the damage as well. But one thing that's very impressive is the CS differential at 10, which at 10.7 for a jungler, considering that there just aren't that many jungle monsters, is extremely high for a 10-minute mark. How are you conceiving your pathing these days, or what are the things that really allow you to get ahead? Because I know a lot of your teammates have said, hey, he really likes to fight over these crabs. He must get the crabs every time. We've made jokes about calling you Crabber instead this split. But what is your current perception of the jungle ever since we saw the buffs coming into the summer split?
Yeah, I mean, I think jungling right now, you can get really far behind if you do ganks that aren't, and it's just not efficient, in my opinion. Like, I think ganking is still good. Like, in my leasing game, I did a level 2 gank bot to make sure my bot lane could get like a 20 CS lead, I guess they got, and secure dragons. But I think, like, right now with jungle XP changes and also my team is just really good. They can push everywhere. Then I can always be able to get advantages because I can make paths that are, I guess, more aggressive, so that I can give myself a lead in that way.
And the focus for C9, have you felt that the team has changed focus to getting you farm as opposed to necessarily controlling things like early dragons like you focused on very heavily in the spring?
Well, I don't think my team focuses on getting me a lead. That's not really what we really talk about. It's more like I'll do what's best for me almost always. And if my team needs me, then I'll change it. But I always tell my team my plan to get myself ahead, and generally I always do get myself ahead, so they can always rely on me to do that. And I don't think we necessarily not play for dragons. I think we play for dragons a lot this split too. It's just a bit hard to play for dragons like this week specifically because we're playing instead of Wukong, right? So we can't really push for the dragons. But in general, I think we're still focusing on objectives a lot. Maybe not as much as last split, I guess, because I'm farming more.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, as you can see here, you're still going for the dragon kills. You're still getting them more than 3/4 of the time, which is huge, but it's also one of the reasons why you're 9-1, right? This has been a central focus, and C9's playstyle really has been about, in 2020 at least, developing that really early soul pressure and then being able to close out the games off of those fights or off of the soul itself. So it does, I mean, I don't think it's changed that much, but we did see, as you say, a little bit less of it, at least this past week, just because you did try and experiment with the Sen of Wukong comps. Does that change the way that you're jungling at all to know that you're just not going to have that pressure in the bottom side?
Yeah, I mean, it felt harder to jungle this week just because when you don't have priority, it's hard to, I guess, play aggressive or make plays. You're more really just playing defensive, which is fine, right? Because you're just scaling, so you can win the game based on your comp. But you definitely have to think more about what they're gonna do instead of what you're gonna do. So it's just a different mindset, I guess.
Moving away from the stats, let's just talk about Spica as a player. So this is a guy that came in to take over from Dardoch in the spring. You finally had your first chance to play against him in the summer split because TSM was the last team that you hadn't played yet, the last team in the first round robin. After watching his games, after seeing him play every team, and now having played against him yourself, what are your overall thoughts about Spica as a jungler?
I think Spica's pretty good. I think he has a lot of potential. I've heard that he's been doing really well in practice, and I think right now he's not amazing or anything, but I think he does have a lot of potential to be really good, given more time playing with his teammates.
Do you think he has any particular strengths as a jungler, or anything that stood out to you in terms of his play?
I think his mechanics are really good as a player. I think a huge problem with a lot of I wouldn't say up and coming talent, but just any players in general is that their mechanics just aren't that good. In order to be the best, you need to have good mechanics, on any role, not just the carry roles, right? You can see all the best players in the world, support, junglers, the ones that you wouldn't consider mechanically intensive, are insanely good at all mechanical champions. So I think that's a really important skill, and I think his mechanics are pretty good.
How do you develop those good mechanics in the LCS or in the NA solo queue environment? Is it more difficult, or do you have to go to other things like the practice tool to really get good?
I don't think mechanics is something you really improve on that much when you're in the LCS. Obviously, you improve, right, because you can see what other people are doing, right, and you're like, oh, I can literally just copy that, right? A new Lee Sin mechanic comes up, right, and you're like, oh, I'll literally just copy that. But I think it's more from how you play in solo queue. It is hard because we're on 60 ping, right? But I guess that's something you can work on when you're on lower ping. But I think it's something that honestly you get from solo queue, and I guess I do use practice tool a lot, honestly. Just to practice. Before I was practicing my E flash R on or ER flash on Gragas, or my EQ flash on Jarvan, or my R flash kicks on Lee Sin. Stuff like this is something I actually use practice tool a lot for. That a lot of people don't. And although these seem really easy mechanics, it's when you're in the moment, if you're not super good at your champion, then you're gonna mess up.
I don't perceive them as being really easy mechanics, but I have the boomer reflexes, so But yes, I think that's definitely one of the more valuable things that can be done with the practice tool, and certainly something that it's very helpful that it was developed for, because I remember before practice tool existed. Do you remember why Riot said that they didn't want practice tool?
No, I actually don't remember. I just remember they didn't want it.
You ready for a good laugh? So they said that having a practice tool would promote toxicity in the game, because people would tell you to go to the practice tool instead of playing the game. So they literally didn't want to put it inside of League of Legends because they were afraid of what people would say to each other if it existed.
Wait, really?
Yes. To which my response was that at least it's promoting positive toxicity, because instead of just telling somebody that they're garbage at the game, you can say you're garbage at the game, go to practice tool to improve, instead of just leaving it that they're just going to be garbage forever, right?
When I was a newer player, I guess, or in lower elo, everyone would tell me to go play normals if I played bad. They'd be like, why are you playing ranked? Go play normals. You can't even play your champion,
Which is also good advice. It's good advice. Don't play ranked if you can't play the champion. But now at least there's another way. So I called it at the time positive toxicity to get practice tool created. And eventually they did it. To their credit, they realized that that was a intellectually tenuous stance to take, and they made that adjustment. But yes, that is the original reason why they said they weren't going to make practice tool, because they thought it would increase toxicity. Hilarious. So let's move on to our next match that you guys had this week, because this is going to be your first loss. And it was, honestly, it was a pretty convincing loss. And I want to start first with the draft in this game, because I thought the draft was quite strange. Let's put it that way, or quite telegraphed at the very least. And I'd love to know what the thought process and what your conversation was going into this draft. Because what we've seen from Mad Lions, who invented this Wukong Senna composition, is, first off, when they debuted it, it was in week 1 of the LEC. and they were on red side. And the purpose of doing this on red side is so that you always have last pick flex for the Wukong, right? They had 3 red side games in which they were planning for, and I talked to Mad Lions about this, so I know very specifically that for them this was going to be a red side strat. Now you did it on blue side against TSM, but you have red side up against 100 Thieves. And yet, your first 2 picks, you see the Karma come in as their first picks, and your first picks are Wukong Senna, which doesn't necessarily tip your hand. Like we've seen Fnatic in the playoffs for LEC move into whatever. You could do it with Zillion. We saw KT in Korea. They did Senna with Maokai with Smeb in the support position this last week. So we know there's some flexibility here, right? You can always still put the Wukong in the top lane. But why didn't you take the Olaf? Your Olaf is fantastic. One thing that I've noticed, and I talked about on Summoning Insight this week with Zazel, was he said, okay, but they always ban, C9 always bans the Trundle when you guys pick the Olaf. Is this a matchup that you don't like, or, even though you had the opportunity to pick the Olaf here or the Trundle?
I don't really want to talk too much on how we draft, but I think we thought we could just take our full bot duo there, and even if they take the Olaf, it should be fine, and I can counterpick it on 3.
Sure.
I ended up picking Jarvan, which I shouldn't have picked in hindsight, obviously, but we thought it'd be good versus Ashe Karma because they'd be immobile.
And Olaf as well. I mean, I understand why the Jarvan comes in. You guys see the Karma, Olaf, Ashe, and you're like, okay, well, Jarvan ult takes care of any of these people if they don't have flash, right? I can always just ult in, EQ out. So I get the Jarvan pick. Moving on to the last round of the draft. Now, let me put it this way: if I had been drafting for you guys, I wouldn't have taken the Jarvan right away. Number one, I probably would have taken Azir in that spot before they had a chance to ban out the Orianna Azir or take some sort of. You could have taken Orianna too, either one of those. But once they see the Jarvan, they ban out the Orianna Azir. And then you guys end up selecting Jace, which obviously just shows that Wukong isn't going into the top side, so you don't have a lot of tricks left. Why didn't you guys take the Galio there, or why didn't you just move the Jarvan pick to lower in the draft? Do you think that this was a little bit of confusion that was happening on your end?
I don't think there was I mean, like I said, I can't really explain this without telling you our entire draft priorities and what we think of champions and champion matchups. So it's pretty hard for me to actually explain this without just giving our entire draft away.
Sure.
But I think we thought being able to take our jungler on 3 and that giving Niski counterpick on 5 would be the best, just because they still had Karma Flex too.
Sure.
They did pick Karma Olaf, so we played that mid jungle, right? We know other teams play that mid jungle. It's very common in other regions as well. So we didn't really think that they could pick anything versus Sen Wukong that really mattered. Even if they knew it was bot lane, right? Because we picked our top lane R4. So we didn't really think it mattered too much. And that if Niski could get a good counter pick versus Olaf plus a champion, that it would be easy for him.
Let's talk about what did actually happen in this game. Moving on from the draft, you guys have the team comps that you drafted. What would you consider your win conditions in this game, or what would be the game plan when you're loading in and you're discussing how your comps are going to interact, or what you guys need to do in order to take down this composition that has a lot of sideline pressure, that pretty clearly wants to split push or get the Camille ahead to provide that pressure in the game? What was the conversation like?
So this game, going into the game, just looking at our 2 drafts, I honestly thought the game was just going to be hard. I didn't think we had, I think we're better, so we could have won. And even in this game, we had completely winning chances, in my opinion. We reviewed it too, but if they wanted, they could have split the map bot side and 4-mando my bot on any wave, because they have TP advantage mid, and Casio has Ghost, and he can't get push. Early levels, right? Once he gets 6 or something, he can push. But early, mid can't push. My bot lane's gonna get humped under tower, Ashe Karma, and they could have invaded my blue, split the map, dove us if they wanted, but they didn't do that. So I was able to farm, and I wanted to pressure topside because Licorice should have been in a winning matchup. He played his lane really poorly, so he had to teabag early. And then I came, blew his flash, and then somehow his wave got frozen on the other side, and yeah, he actually said in comms that he was just gonna die. He was like, "Yeah, I'm probably just gonna die here," when he was walking in. But I think even after that, we still could have won the game. We got 2 kills at Herald, I believe.
Yep. You
And
did.
then and then I think I killed someone else. After that, I don't remember. But at that point, Eric was up, or Liquid was up 2 levels on Jace, and actually, this is when they invaded our red buff before they killed Niski. We were up gold, and we were also gonna win mid 2v2 there. So that was our pressure timing, and also bot lane was winning. Like after Niski died, obviously they 2v2 killed them. So that was actually gonna be our pressure timing, but after Niski died, it was pretty bad, and then we inted mid lane after. And after that, we couldn't really play.
So that was the big turning point in the game, was the mid lane fight where you guys opted into it. What would you have done differently in retrospect in that situation where they're trying to engage on you and you guys just answered the call of the all-in?
The dragon fight, you said?
No, the mid lane fight.
Oh, the mid lane fight? Yeah, I mean, they just ran at Niski pretty much, and nothing happened. We actually just chunked Galio to half for free, and at this point in the game, Liquid was actually really strong. So I don't know if it was like miscommunication or something, but Ashe was moving, which was called for, and Zen was catching a bot wave, and then Licorice TP'd on like a melee minion. So we were trying to save him because he was gonna die. But yeah, if that didn't happen, I think that fight was decently winnable for sure. If he TP's on our side, because 1 EQ will do half of anyone's health.
Once you guys find yourself behind, one thing that I appreciate is that you at least continue to try to win. And as you alluded to earlier, when you're behind on the Jarvan and you have to go in to engage on them, you're just going to end up dying a lot. As long as you're trying to keep winning the game, right? You could just theoretically bleed out, never fight them, never take objectives, and end with a fine KDA. But you guys kept trying to fight to get back into it. Do you think after that mid lane fight that there was a reasonable chance for you to get back into this game, or did you just kind of have to throw shit at a wall and see if it stuck?
No, I mean, I personally thought the game was lost. Obviously, none of us said that in game, right? But we all kind of knew that like we can't team fight them. They have Galio Olaf, which is honestly really good against our bot duo, like team fighting wise, right? It's hard for Wukong to really engage versus Galio, Karma protecting, and even if like this Ashe is literally useless. So even if we kill Ashe, like who cares, right? And Niski can't really play because Camille Galio. So yeah, I mean, no one actually said the game was lost, but like after we lost that fight, we were all like, yeah, I don't know how to play this game. Camille's gonna win split push too.
Yeah, Camille got ahead. You've got to win split push, and the Olaf. I mean, the thing about that is he has so many choices of where to go. He could just walk into Niski and kill him. If Sven tries to flank, well, he could just kill Sven almost instantly because he's not going to get knocked up, right? He just presses R and just walks on him. So it seemed like you had to just deal with contracts, especially as he kept getting more and more and more fed on this Olaf, right? He ends up with 10, 1, and 7 in this game, which is pretty crazy stat line. But as an Olaf player yourself, how hard is it to deal with this situation with this rampaging Olaf? Is there really anything you can do about it?
Oh, I mean, no, the game was completely lost and we lost the mid fight. But before then, they like did this red invade us too, where Licorice was 11 and they were 9, and Olaf had no flash, and my E was down because I eat the Krugs. But like if I just EQ them and Eric shock blast them over the Krug wall, they're both just dead and the game is over. But I mean, they just know my E's down, so that sucked. But I think there's no real way to really stop their team comp once we get like 4K, 5K behind. And yeah, I mean, it was just a hard game to play because they had faster farming jungler, and then they had 2 pushing lanes mid bot, and Eric obviously should have been winning, but unlucky. So they just ended up having 3 pushing lanes, so it was really hard for me to play as a jungler in particular, and my team to play overall.
Okay, we're going to take a little bit of a break here, and then when we come back, we'll look at some overall team stats between you and 100 Thieves and talk about 100 Thieves' improvement, because they are 3-1 over the past 2 weeks and dealt you guys your first loss. And then we'll chat a little bit about what you guys are expecting in the coming weeks, and we'll take some Twitch chat Q&A as well. So if you guys do have questions for Blaber, prepare them, and I'll go through them and see if we have any good ones. So in the meantime, let's take a look at the overall Cloud9 news here on the Nines with the Roundup. Howdy there, buckaroos and buckarettes, and welcome to another edition of the Cloud9 Roundup, your weekly source for all of Cloud9's news and updates. And we start with a very unfortunate one today. The LCS team for Cloud9 has officially taken their first loss of the summer split at the very start of the second round robin versus 100 Thieves. Wasn't all bad though. They did beat TSM, which some might say is the more important of the two given the rivalry. But that said, they do finish the week 1-1 with a 9-1 record overall. The Academy team, well, they won versus TSM Academy, but they too fell to 100 Thieves Academy on the season. Now, there was something special that Riot did this past weekend. On Friday, they debuted the Cloud9 Classic roster versus the Classic TSM roster. Except for Reginald, he was a bit of a no-show when it came to this show match. Didn't matter though, Cloud9 did end up taking the win regardless, even though it was against Boy in the mid lane. Another Cloud9 victory and a blast from the past. Might be fun to mosey on over and take a look at that match if you haven't seen it. Now, if you're looking for some Counter-Strike news, it's going to be a long month. CSGO is officially on the player break, and that means that Cloud9's players are taking a well-deserved rest. We'll see them more in August. Now, for teamfight tactics, you may not know this, but if you check out the Cloud9 channel that you're watching just now, why don't you give it a follow? You can check out some TFT action as Cloud9's Nebula NA closed qualifiers started last week and are continuing on July 15th and 16th for 2 spots to the TFT Championship. Now that's being cast by my old partner Doa, as well as the excellent Frodan. You don't want to miss that. Moving on to a little FPS action, PUBG Mobile. Adder joins the C9 PUBG Mobile roster as the 4th player, and they end day 1 of the PMWL Season 0 in 12th place with 29 points. Up for Rainbow Six Cloud9, they dropped the match 4-7 against Giants Gaming and lost also against Xavier Esports. Better luck next week. Now for the Valorant tournament, Cloud9 and Friends, remember, only 2 players currently on the roster with Tens and Relics. They managed to make it all the way to the finals before losing against Gen G at the Pulse Invitational. Although, we did see that big win in the quarterfinals over TSM, so Cloud9's Valorant team, they look to be ramping up in the coming weeks. Finally, some organizational news for Cloud9. They are collaborating with Uconnect Esports to bring you digital watch parties during this pandemic and events to collegiate esports organizations. Collegiate leaders can register for this campaign exclusively on the Uconnect platform. So if you're in college, just like I used to be with these pants you can see here, you can head on over to the Uconnect Esports platform. And big news for you merch fans. Puma and Cloud9 have dropped the summer collection. So, it might be hot outside, and you can look hot too in your new Puma and Cloud9 gear. Head on over to c9.gg/store to pick up the new merch. Well, that does it for this week's Cloud9 Roundup. Now back to the Nines. Welcome back to the Nines, presented by AT&T. I'm here with Blaber, talking about their first loss of the week. But before we continue, we've got to do a Puma giveaway. As you can see, there's tons of new Puma merch for the summer that has just dropped in the Cloud9 store. And now's your chance to go ahead and buy some of that with a Puma gift card. So if you are over 18 and you live in North America, just like me and Blaber, we are both these things, you can win Puma merch. And just put hashtag Puma in the chat, and somebody from the Cloud9 team on Twitch will get back to you with that. What is your favorite new piece of merch from the summer collection there, Blaber?
My favorite new piece of merch?
Yeah.
Man, I haven't actually ordered anything from the summer collection, but
weren't you in some of those shoots?
Yeah, I mean, actually, there's like, I don't know if that's part of the summer collection, but there's like a long sleeve that I'm wearing. There's a new Puma one that I've been wearing. It's like a white one. It kind of is like the Orbit one, but doesn't have the Orbit thing on it. I like that one.
All right, there you go. There you go. So you too can buy the Puma merch now, up for the summer. I know there's a lot of shorts options. I really like one of the new pullover hoodies. Actually, you know what I really like is the fact that they made some more minimal shirts with like the small logo of Cloud9 with the Puma. See, I'm 33 years old, so I'm not going to wear like a bunch of like giant Cloud9 shit anymore. So if you're old like me, now there's clothes for you too, where you don't look like a billboard, but you can still show off that you like C9 and Puma. So there you go.
True.
Anyway, you can look like a billboard, Blaber. It's okay. When we are going back now to the 100 Thieves, let's bring up some more stats for you to look at. So I pulled some stats for the last 2 weeks of competition. So both you and 100 Thieves are 3-1. And we're just going to take a look at this patch, 10.13 specifically, and how 100 Thieves has improved since they introduced Puma and contracts into the roster. 100 Thieves obviously looking significantly better right now. And I want to take a look at some of the objective control, because it's something that you guys in Cloud9 have always been excellent at, and it's something that 100 Thieves has really struggled with, oftentimes because they didn't have a lot of pressure in the mid lane. But Ryoma is looking a lot better this summer, and I want your take on it. So first off, they're doing an excellent job with the Dragons. Now, we saw earlier that you were taking over 75% of Dragons across the entire summer split, but the last 2 weeks you've taken barely over 50%. You said part of that has to do with the fact that you don't have the pressure in the bot when you're running this Senna and Wukong. But what has been your perception of the last 2 weeks of Cloud9's play? Have you felt like you guys have been a little bit off, or has it just been trying this new style that doesn't get you the same level of Dragon pressure?
I mean, I definitely don't think we're playing off. I think for objective control, at least, it has a lot to do with bottom lane priority. And we, like, if we have a 53% dragon percentage, that means the week before this week, it was probably like 80 or something. Because I think we got like one dragon. Even in our game against TSM, like, we lost the first 2 dragons, I'm pretty sure. And same goes for Herald. Like, usually if you can't push bottom and mid in general, then you, one, won't get the first dragon, and you also will not get the first Herald because there's a horrible move on their move timing, and you also don't have mid push, right? So that's just how it is. When you don't draft for pushing lanes, you won't get the early objectives, but honestly, that's really a fine way to play, in my opinion, because like the first 2 dragons don't actually do anything as long as they can't get 4, you know?
Right.
Like, it doesn't actually matter if your team comp hard outscales theirs. But I do think, like, our objective control was worse this week just because of the champs we're picking. And also, both games I've picked, like, I guess a weaker early game jungler. More of like a team fighting one in Set and Jarvan compared to like Volibear and Olaf. So I'm also weak early.
Fair enough. Well, let's talk about the actual changes that 100 Thieves made now. Thank you to Microsoft for providing these stats for us. What do you think about contracts coming back into the LCS? Obviously, a former Cloud9 player himself. He looked really good. You know, nothing against. I don't think Meteos was a huge problem on this roster, but contracts really looks like he's gotten a lot better. And I think too. I was reading in an interview that he said he had like I wouldn't say like an attitude issue, but a perception issue where he felt he wasn't working as hard because he assumed that it would be a lot easier to be in academy, and that he had adjusted that within himself in order to get his work ethic back into a good place. But he's looked really strong over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think Conjure's been playing pretty well. ever since he came back in the LCS. I've never actually thought that he was a bad player, so I'm happy to see him back. I think the changes that they made with him and Poom, I think, is really what I guess made their team better. I don't think Meteos was a huge problem, honestly, but I do think that Stunt was playing really bad.
Yes,
And
I agree with that.
I think honestly the Poom change is much bigger. I think he's been playing a lot better, and I think together, like with jungle and support, which is honestly two really important roles to be working together, I think it's made them look a lot stronger.
Do you think that with the power of the support position right now, and as a jungler you know this well, like it is a lot of times the support's job to help mid push out, to kind of free up the jungler and to free up the mid lane in order to move more successfully around the map. Do you think that changing for Puma has also really helped Ryoma, or do you think that part of the perception of Ryoma's play was the fact that he didn't have a lot of help to kind of create map pressure or free himself from the mid lane?
No, I think Ryoma's just been playing better. I mean, I don't know how much better. Like last split, he was just losing 1v1 that had nothing to do with jungle and support interaction, in my opinion. So I think he's been playing better this split. But I do think a lot of mid lane is dictated by your jungle and support, right? And if your jungler is always mid and out pressuring the enemy jungler, and if your support can move on every wave, like the enemy mid laner can't actually play, you know? And when the enemy mid laner can't play, none of your lanes can play, you know, because mid can move everywhere on any wave because mid lane's balanced. But but yes, pretty much I think having a stronger support or one that is willing to move to your lane more is always going to be beneficial to any jungle or mid.
After having lost to 100 Thieves, what do you think the power level of this team is right now? Do you think this is a team that's going to be able to make a comeback and maybe barely get into those playoffs and try and make a run at it? Or is this just a temporary bright spot for this roster?
I don't really know what their overall power ranking is. I think they're improved a lot, but I honestly don't think they'll be one of the best teams in the league, if that's what you're asking. We haven't obviously played versus them in practice since they got their new roster because we played them last week. So we'll see how it goes. I think we play them this week. I'm not too sure, but yeah, I don't really have a good perception of how good they actually are, but they do look like they're getting a lot better.
A lot of this week was characterized by upsets, and except for Team Liquid, who's now only a game behind you guys in the standings at 8-2, I believe. Do you think Team Liquid is the second best team so far in the LCS? Because it's been a conversation, right? The biggest conversation around the LCS is Cloud9's way up here in the sky where clouds belong, and then everybody else is just upsetting each other underneath that. Team Liquid, even though they're winning, doesn't look very decisive. They're playing a very slow style of League of Legends that it drags games out and doesn't, I think, make them look particularly strong in the way that they're winning. Do you have a contender for second place?
Yeah, I mean, in the standings it's Team Liquid, but I mean, I don't really know who it is, but I don't think Team Liquid is very scary to us, at least. They have a very distinct drafting, and it's very easy to play against, as well as their play style. They're going to draft Impact like Mordekaiser or a tank every game. Brock's like the same thing, like Lee Sin or something, and then they're going to have Mage plus Aphelios, and like that's their entire draft, honestly.
Hey, that's not fair. It's just all right.
Yeah,
yes,
it's just really easy for us to play against, honestly. But they're able to win versus other people, I guess. So maybe they're doing something right. But honestly, I don't know who the second best team in the league is.
So it's still you guys, and then your perception is still that it's just
it just doesn't matter.
A mess down below that. There's no real threat to Cloud9 throughout all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think our biggest threat is honestly just, I think if we have a favorable draft or even a 50-50 draft going into the game, then we will always come out winning, in my opinion. I think, yeah. I mean, usually if we're not if we're losing, I think it's more of us playing poorly. I mean, obviously, they're playing well too, right? Like this weekend, I think 100 played really well, but I also think we didn't play very well. So I think it's just us, depending on us, how we're doing.
I also think you had a rough draft situation. So really what you're saying is the team that is most likely to beat Cloud9 is Reapered.
I wouldn't blame Reapered entirely, but
Reapered
I guess, sure.
and Westrice.
Yeah, I mean, on this team, honestly, drafting is done a lot by the players. We pretty much get to choose what we want to play for the most part. Obviously, Reaper and West will give us like suggestions and what they think is good here, and tell us like what they can potentially pick, right? To like counter your champion. Like obviously, like your 1v1 matchup doesn't matter that much if your entire champion is countered by the enemy team comp. So yeah, drafting is a lot done by players on this team, but the coaches definitely help out a lot with that too.
So let's start taking a few questions from Twitch chat to round out this show. One question that I saw earlier was there a change in the mood or the atmosphere of the team after the loss, or did you guys just not take it that hard?
No. I mean, we're all really close, and there was definitely no like change in the mood or atmosphere, I'd say. For our team, I think we literally reviewed the game like 30 minutes after we lost, and we were like, yeah, this draft was really hard to play, and even though it was hard to play, we still could have won. There were like so many chances we had to win, honestly, and we just played really bad. And Eric just came in review, said like, yeah, I played bad. This is not how the lane should go. And then we had like careless deaths, and we were like, why did we play so poorly? But after that, we're just all chilling and back to making fun of each other.
So not a big deal at all. From Drex, what off-meta jungler do you wish you could show off on stage if your teammates and coaches would let you?
Is it something I have had to play already? Like, have I played it before? Does that matter?
No, just whatever you want.
Well, Kha'Zix just got buffed.
He did?
So maybe I'll play that this weekend.
Please no. I don't want to go back to that. Any other ones besides Kha'Zix?
I mean, I've always liked to play Talia. It's always been one of my favorite champs to play. But I don't think it's very good right now. So you probably won't be seeing it. But I like playing it, yeah.
Here's a question. So Zazel said publicly how C9 would fare if you guys aren't winning all of your lanes. How do you think you'll deal with that on an international stage for Worlds?
I think we'll be perfectly fine, honestly. I think I mean, Sven always says to me like there's no skill in bot lane besides when he's playing it. He says bot lane is very simple, right? Like it's not like mid lane or jungle or top lane where like a matchup can be changed based on how you play, right? But he says bot lane, like you're either winning or you're losing, and once you buy these items on these champions, you will have push or you won't have push, and it's just that simple. Unless he's playing it, then he has push on both sides. But yeah, so I think if we just draft really well, we won't have, in my opinion, 3 losing lanes. Because I just don't see that happening. I don't think, like, regardless of what people think, I don't think we're outclassed individually. Maybe by like some players, right? Like maybe the best players in the world, but each team doesn't have 5 of the best players in the world, right? So I don't think we'll just be outclassed individually that hard.
I also think that people forget that oftentimes with Worlds too, it comes with some heavy boot camping in advance. And even if people complain about NA solo queue or whatever, even if it's in NA, what happens is with the influx of all of the good players, like all the best teams in the world, the quality of solo queue games in that region goes way up during the period before and during Worlds because there's so many new top tier players that are queuing up and playing a ton over that period. Or you're just going to a region with a better server, and even then that same effect is happening. So I tend to think that because teams have such a long time to boot camp before Worlds, it does tend to level out individual play just from that solo queue practice and experience. Has that been what you've noticed as well?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the biggest problem for us going into Worlds I've only been twice, right? But for the 2 years I've gone, is that we are just so much worse than the other teams, like the other good teams in the league. We're just so much worse, and we spend most of our practice trying to catch up to them, like catch up to their meta or catch up to their playstyle while they're improving, right? So if we're spending all our time playing catch up while they're getting better, we're never gonna be as good as them. Like, we're just trying to catch up on an individual level, in my opinion. So I think if we're able to skip that part going into this Worlds and just like be improving with them, like not just get completely shit on for the first 2 weeks that we go, which always happens. We're just getting dumpstered the first 2 weeks we go. If that doesn't happen, I think we will be able to improve a lot faster. And obviously it'll be good to scrim international teams as well as play solo queue with those players.
One of the questions was there a particular team that you guys, or you personally, really want to face that you've seen play in another region?
I mean, I want to play against JDG if they go to Worlds. I've been watching Conavi a lot, and I think he's really good. So, yeah, I'd probably want to play against JDG, personally.
Fair enough. So you're taking the better jungler approach, but not necessarily, because top, I think, is the better team right now.
I mean, yeah. I'm sure Niski would love to play against Knight, so.
I would personally love to see that myself. Did you see any of the games this last week between DRX and Damwon in Korea?
Yeah, I watched a little bit of that game, I believe.
I would think that would make you feel very confident, because that was the top two teams in Korea, and that game was that match was a shit show. So.
Yeah, I saw who was it? Was it Showmakers TF, or was it, I don't know? Someone TF ulted into 5 people behind the line bush and just completely lost his team the entire game. So it reminded me of one of Niski's ults, and I just made fun of him about
it. So there are questions people have about your champion pool right now, and asking how narrow it is at the moment, and perhaps the fact that you haven't really shown Graves play so far.
Oh, you want to ask about my Graves?
Yeah, sure. Or your champion pool in general. Do you feel like you have a big champion pool right now?
I mean, I've always thought my champion pool is big. I think I just generally play what I think is the best in the situation, regardless of how much I've practiced it. And I don't really ever feel worried about my champion pool, but I haven't played too well on the tanks, I guess, or the tankier champions that I've been playing. I've been dying a lot. And regarding Graves, we banned it 6 or 9 out of 10 games, I think. So maybe that answers your question.
I also know that you have a bigger champion pool because I see your scrims from time to time, and like I knew you were playing a lot of Kindred and scrims in the spring, but we didn't actually see it come out until the spring playoffs. So there's always a ton of stuff. Because remember, guys, for every one game you see on stage, there's literally like 10 plus games that you're not seeing in scrims, because there's usually like 4 days of scrims a week. You guys play 5 games per scrim. You only play 2 games on stage. So you're only seeing like, 1/10 of the number of games that are actually played in a given week. So obviously there are going to be a lot of different experiments that were going on across all players with champion pools and different strats. So Direct has another one for you. You're well recognized for your mid-jungle synergy with Niski. If you were to play a jungle top-heavy style, which player, if you couldn't pick Licorice, which player would you want to play with that you think you'd have a lot of synergy with in the top lane?
From NA?
We'll do from NA and then anywhere in the world. You can answer both.
Okay, well, I played with Kumo before, so maybe I'll just play with my boy Kumo again from NA.
Okay. That's a bad choice. Someday exists, but that's fine. You can play with Kumo if you want.
Well, actually, I mean, it'd be great to play with someday, but if we're talking about playing for top jungle synergy. Some days, though, honestly, a weak side player, or he plays more towards that. So if I want to play with someone that I want to pressure top towards, maybe someday would not be the best choice. Not that he's like worse than Kuma or anything, but
You'll get Kumo's Riven fed. It will be a glorious thing. So internationally, if you could pick any player in the world.
Maybe it'd be with. I mean, before this last year, I would have wanted to play with the Shy because that guy is insane. But now he just dies to every gank, and
he does.
I have a lot of experience with that, playing with Licorice, dying to every gank. So probably wouldn't choose him, but I'd probably play with Nuguri. I think he's really good. We're playing really well right now, and I know Eric always really looks up to him as a top laner, and he's always like watching his VODs or talking about his play style, and that he's like a psychopath with the way he builds, and the way he trades, and yeah, I mean it'd be an interesting experience.
So you'd pick Korean Licorice.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So finally, let's get one more question in here. I think there was a good one. Hold on. Going on because you guys are only playing 2 games a week, people are asking, do you wish that there were more on-stage games, or, I mean, that's not the right term during this pandemic, or official games?
Was there any on-stage games?
Yeah, of course. Do you wish you would play more official games in a given week, or is 2 enough for you guys?
I mean, I don't personally care how many games we play. I think if we play more, then the split is just shorter, unless we're playing more games overall, which obviously like was a thing back in the day, right? They would play a lot more games than 18, or they would play best of 3s. For me, I don't really care how many we play, but as long as we get enough time to practice, right? It's like I don't really want to play like 4 stage games with 3 days of practice. It's like I mean, we're just showing everything we practiced in 1 week on stage, and also you might run out of things, so you might not be practiced to go into your stage games.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That'll wrap up this episode of The Nines presented by AT&T. Thank you for being the sacrificial victim here on your week of a loss to try and explain to everyone why you guys lost, which is, I know, not necessarily the most fun thing, but you don't seem to be taking it too hard. So, all right. So thank you very much for joining us. We will see you guys for another episode of The Nines on Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, and 7 p.m. Central European Summer Time. We will see you next week.